Today we are celebrating World Mental Health Day, which, as Katie would rightly say, we should be celebrating it every day. But this is basically a day that we put in the diary on the Saturday, this coming Saturday, and we're going to focus on the topic of the importance of supporting mental health at work by talking to our panelists about what are the common problems and how can we support teams and leaders at work. Mental health problems are all too common in the workplace, and it's the leading cause of sickness absence. A staggering 70 million workdays are lost each year due to mental health problems in the UK, costing employers approximately 2.4 billion a year. So an essential building block for workplace mental health is the ability to have open, authentic conversations about mental health in the workplace, both individually and on a strategic level. So this is more important than ever as we recover from the impact of the pandemic. And I'm going to introduce the panelists. So the idea is to create a conversation about mental health. So I will be asking individual questions, but obviously please feel free to jump in when you have something to say. So first off, Katie Phillips is an experienced strategic communicator and mental health first aider, and is on a mission to eradicate burnout from the world of work. So Katie, just tell us a little bit about your work and how you got into helping with mental health and burnouts.
Well, I'm working now with individuals and with teams, so with businesses, helping them to navigate this tricky subject so they can avoid burnout and nurture mental health in the workplace. Like, the idea isn't just to kind of put a patch over people's symptoms, but actually prevent them from happening in the first place. So the reason I got into it is because I struggled with my own mental health about 2 years ago, just over. I had a really kind of significant burnout, which resulted in all sorts of other mental health issues that I won't go into now unless someone's particularly interested. But I realized that the wonky relationships that we have with work that we've built through our entire life just aren't serving us, aren't serving businesses. And I was, kind of wanted to just be the change, without sounding really cliche, be the change that I wanted to see in the workplace. So since that, I've been, looking at different ways that we can work that are more people focused, that still get people the results they want, but just in a different way that's, putting mental health before all of the productivity, because if you're not mentally healthy, then the business is going to struggle regardless.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So prioritizing mental health. Okay, so we'll learn more from you later. And then next up we have Monica Flames, who is an intuitive healer with 20 years experience as a holistic therapist and spiritual teacher. And you are passionate about helping every person, including children, to fulfill their highest potential. So Monica, tell us about your work and your experience, and how you help with children and grown-ups with your work.
Right. Yes, actually, one of the reasons why I became a therapist and also an instructor to help people into personal growth and mental and emotional well-being, it is because I was very critic with the way I saw professionals and many professions were working, and I had my part of my life where I was working for companies and I was into different systems. And so I finally tried to find another way, and coming from design and art, for me, it was a transition that taught me a lot about how we can really try to do things differently. And from that point, I was just trying to get education and try to get good techniques from different perspectives, not only from the Western societies, but also Eastern societies, to see how we can really change, not only to maintain some kind of mental and emotional well-being, but also to be able to prevent and to be more resilient. And not only people, adults, but also children and teenagers. So some of my education also got involved into how to help people with mental disorders and neurological disorders. And so from that perspective, I was really shocked about how many people all over the world are developing neurological disorders and mental disorders, which is actually increasing and increasing. So for me, actually, I realized quite a long ago that this is really like a big pandemic. So it's something that is underlying, that goes, under the skin. Nobody wants to talk too much about it. There's more openness now, but as you said, there's still some stigma. And for example, with children and teenagers, there's like a high rate of mental disorders. And so from that perspective, I just try to go to a start point and to help teenagers, people to go to a point where they get back like their decision or their ability to organize or reorder their life, and also to change the priorities. I think this subject and all subjects that matter with health is about how to transform the priorities in which we have built our life.
Okay, good, Monica. But we'll hear more about that and how you help educate people from a young age in terms of, what are the priorities. Next up, we just have Javier Suarez, who is an entrepreneur based in Barcelona and co-founder of Oliver. Javier, who we met before. Javier, tell me about your passion to, build your new app, which is, providing wellness people on, giving access to wellness, wellness healers and therapists. Sorry, therapists is what I'm trying to say. So just tell us about your experience and why you decided to start this app with Sankar.
Yeah, so thanks a lot. So basically, during my previous project that I was doing, it was a travel company, as you know, and it was my first real startup, my first real big project, right? And I had no idea how intense this was going to be, and obviously it was very intense. It was a fast-paced company, and then anxiety really started to pop up, to the point that it was starting to collide and make my work really hard on a daily basis. So I started to go into the internet and search, right? I had no idea where to start. So I went online, and then I quickly realized how difficult it is to find help, right? And let me really quickly walk through the process. I mean, if you have no idea about this topic, what you do is that you go to Google and you say, for example, I want to see a psychologist in Barcelona, right? And what happens then? You get 100 of them. And you just simply have no idea where to start because you have 100, right? You see the pictures, you see how they've written. They all have really the most have a very clinical language. So as a patient that doesn't understand the topic, it's just a really risky thing because A, you need to find somebody that you want to open up with, and B, you have a limited budget, so you have to get it right on the first time in most cases, right? And even if you have more budget to do it again, you probably don't have the energy to go again through the process of finding somebody and spending that money again. So it just stuck to my mind. It's 2020, and that previous company, I was the founder, so I had a bit more resources to take care of myself than my team. And if it was so hard for me, it must have been incredibly hard for them, right? And to summarize it, it's just pretty mind-blowing to me that today age, it's so hard to find mental health support the right for you. There is out there, but it's completely scattered and fragmented and sometimes a bit, outdated in how they do things. So it just makes absolutely no sense that in 2020, companies, have no idea where they should go to find this kind of support for employees, and employees themselves also have no idea where they should go. So, and then just to finish off, what I realized was I started, of course, trying out different platforms. And I just noticed that the most of the products out there right now are just really focused on creating a scalable solution. And what I mean with that is quality is not really the main focus for them. They want to be able to serve 1 billion people within 5 years. And I think that's the wrong approach, right? I think that there's different degrees of professionals, different requirements per person. So I just don't think that a one size fits all is the best approach. And that's why we're trying to do something very personalized, super easy to access, no hassle, and really experienced therapists.
Okay, great. So it's actually, yeah, because I mean, not everybody connects with therapists in a different way and obviously builds a relationship, you know, with them differently. So it comes down to choice and relationship and how they feel, etc. And Sankar, you were at Typeform. So you sort of, you know, decided to take a new route. I mean, you know, how did you get into sort of the interest of providing therapists on demand?
Yeah, so similar story to Javi really. So I've been working in startups for the last decade, more or less, and leading marketing teams. And it feels like it's been getting more and more intense, like the more my career has progressed over time, right? So faster paced startups and yeah, very stressful environments, environments where you're often doing a lot of things for the first time because, you know, there isn't a path laid out in front of you. And that puts a lot of pressure on you and your team as well. So I experienced that burnout myself, working for a previous company. I've seen people in my team experience burnout. I've seen colleagues experience burnout as well. And this is not even kind of going into any other issues that we may have, right? Any other things that we have going on. You know, burnout is just one thing that can be affecting our mental health, and I think it's definitely becoming more prevalent the more time goes on. So I realized that my interest is more in building something from scratch. I had this experience behind me. I met this guy, Javi, who explained what he just explained to you very eloquently. And I bought into that. Like, I just got it straight away. I went through a similar experience. I've tried therapy in a couple of different settings. I've tried the kind of in-person, in-clinic therapy, found it very clinical, very meaningful. You know, the therapy itself was actually quite good for me, but the experience was very clinical and not meant for people like me, not meant for busy people. I had to work very hard to do anything, like pay for it, schedule anything. And then, you know, I've also tried things at the other end of the spectrum, like Headspace, Calm, these apps, kind of very consumer-led, doing a great job, but I wouldn't call them meaningful therapy at this point. It's not therapy, it's self-paced. You know, you have to kind of be very motivated to use them. You can definitely get a lot of good from them, but I wouldn't put them on the same, you know, on the same level as that in-person talking therapy. So there was a gap. There was clearly a gap, and a lot of people need this. So that's what got me excited about this opportunity.
Right. Okay. Great. Well, look, it's wonderful to have you here. And Kasia, tell us. You're a mindful mentor. Tell us about your work that you've been doing, and also how you bring mindfulness into the workplace.
Okay. So I now support mainly startups, and resonate with what you guys say about how intense it is and how many people burn out in the process. But I come from a different background, which is a TV production background, which back in the day was, and still is, a highly stressful, super intense environment. And I always had mindfulness, yoga, meditation practice to support me. So I was one of these producers that always sort of appeared calm and had everything under control to an extent, and it didn't burn me out. But seeing how all the people burn out and end up with more serious psychological problems and mental health issues, I thought, all right, like that's where I need to go, because I have the experience of a super demanding job. I have this practice, that's my practice, and I want to share it with other people. But also what I noticed as well, that by building my own business, there is this fine line between offering what I do and not burning out myself in the process of building it. So I'm experiencing that on my own skin sort of every single week. So the tools I offer for people like meditation, mindfulness, are all designed for busy people, leaders, people who want to create ideally good in the world and are ambitious and are high achievers and want to take action, and how they can balance it out to stay resilient, to stay focused, to have clarity, to remember with what intention they started, and to build those little habits. So it's a mix of talking and that meaning that you mentioned before me, Sankar, but also simple techniques that you can own. Kind of it becomes part of your habit, and that means that you can become that conscious and sort of energetic leader for longer period of time, rather than going all in and 1-2 years later burning out.
Great. Okay, wonderful. We're going to talk from the wellness side and also from the startup side, and see where we, what problems that we face in the workplace. And Stephen, from a slightly sort of, you've been working as helping with conflict resolution and mental health for over 25 years. And you're based in Colombia right now and helping with the peace transition. So tell us a little bit, Stephen, about your work over there.
Well, hello, good morning to everyone. I hope I'm in the Andes in the office up here. I hope the speed is good for all to hear. Our experience, I lived in the UK and then moved into Spain and started in the army forces in Colombia. Different kind of experiences, not like aviation, logistics, but always marketing. But always our focus was how can we in our workplace improve the conditions of people through empowerment, through the different difficulties, but also I said my work has never been as a firefighter. I don't like that. I'm more a strategic building so that they can cope with situations like COVID or the financial crisis that we lived in Europe and the world some years ago. But that was the beginning. And then, as many of you said and commented, you feel that there is a need to deliver at a bigger scale, and we put ourselves in a bigger challenge. And I say we because my partner, she's Dr. Elia Kezuram, and she's back in France. And what we decided was to focus in mental health through alternative solutions. We research around through many different tech companies, actually delivering something different, but we couldn't find it. We went in London, Amsterdam, all the bigger cities throughout 3 years, and the music that we were looking for, there was not there. So finally we decided, we said, okay, we would just have to give it a shot because that music is not there. And we created Pentagon Wave. And that was created at the Scientific Park in Barcelona. And it was focused on that, and how can we help in conflict resolution and also in mental health prevention. Where and obviously using different techniques. So initially we started with different workshops that obviously we still use. And it was fantastic because it was a way of making people.
Oh, we're losing you a bit. Stephen, we're losing you a bit. Oh, Stephen?
Oh, okay, no, 1 second. There.
Yeah. Is it better without the video, maybe? Yeah.
I'll remove the video, yeah.
Okay.
And so, yeah, what we decided finally is, okay, it was successful, but throughout doing workshops, it would have taken years of our lives. And our mission put it pretty high. We said we will help in the world in mental health and conflict resolution. And when you put it at that level, many people say possible. So we did it at the scientific park. We did it in Europe for about 7,000 people. And at that time, it was year 2015, the biggest challenge, it was perhaps to go to Colombia. The peace process, it was not, or the deal, it was not signed yet. So we arrived in November 2016, and we started making connections to reach the FARC guerrilla, and obviously to be ready and one of the first organizations to deliver support to them and to with the victims. That's if you approach it from the psychological point of view, it's impossible, right? And especially if we are joining 200, 300, 500 people at a time. So that was the challenge. We've been in Colombia over the past three and a half years now, and we've to FARC guerrilla, to the army, to universities, communities, etc. So that's been the work over here, and
Okay.
And now we're back in Europe. So
Great.
yeah, that's
Helping
the
with
process.
the-
That's what we do.
Okay, brilliant, Stephen. We'll talk more in a minute. Do we have Filippo here? Is he here? Filippo's not here.
Hello. Yeah, of course I am.
Oh,
Can you
Filippo,
hear me?
there you are. How are you? Goodness, but it's great. It's great to have you here. Filippo, the co-founder of Essentia, based in, well, born in Barcelona, the startup, but now based in Berlin. Just tell us briefly about what you're doing with Essentia and helping with, you know, getting people to work more productively in, you know, with using your platform.
Yeah, well, so the idea is really to look at our daily work experience as an opportunity to not just be productive, but grow as individuals and boost our mental and emotional well-being. And so we wondered, you know, how can we bring all these amazing concepts of mindfulness, well-being, productivity into actually a solution that is technologically. And so the idea is we've looked at the neuroscience of productivity. We've looked at the neuroscience of well-being to understand, you know, what are the necessary conditions that people need in order to thrive in their daily life. And so we've kind of got really inspired by that, started working with some coaches as well, and said, how can we bring these concepts into a tool so that it's what we've built now is basically a personal management system where people manage their daily tasks, but then we have an intelligent assistant that comes in that kind of helps people really integrate these practices in the flow of their daily life, so they can, you know, succeed in their tasks but not burn out, experience greater work-life balance, and most importantly, boost their mental and emotional well-being, which is fundamental ultimately, not just for their productivity, but for their personal growth and evolution as professionals and individuals.
Okay.
And so that's really what our mission is.
Great, Filippo, great. So I'm going to start with you. Know, how do we measure mental wellness at work? How do you help measure it in terms of, you know, productivity and sort of making sure that people are okay? How can employees check in with their employees at work? How do you help with that?
Well, you know, according to research, our brain experiences 20,000 moments in a day. So for me personally, it's something that is important to do on a daily basis. And when we look at well-being, always according to research, there's really two parts. There is the sort of, you know, hedonic well-being, which is, you know, I have a nice meal and I feel good, and that's one experience. And then there is eudaimonic well-being, and this is actually, in my opinion, the more profound part, because this is linked to satisfaction of human needs such as, you know, competence, relatedness, autonomy, self-acceptance, which are all aspects that are linked to our intrinsic motivation, which is the motivation we have to pursue something without the need for any external reward. And this fuels our sense of purpose, meaning, self-actualization, which in work terms translates to, you know, job satisfaction, engagement, and ultimately performance. And these factors have been shown, according to research, they vary day to day. So I believe it's fundamental to measure this aspect to understand how people are doing. To really focus on, you know, how committed, how inspired, and how good do they feel about themselves and the work that they're doing, because that could, in my opinion, really relate to their well-being and productivity in their work and also in life.
Okay, great. So, and how is Essentia helping with that? I mean, you're getting people to check in with exercises and kind of, you know, measure their sort of productivity. How does it help?
Yeah, so I mean, the experience for us is always, whenever people start their day, is to have a quick check-in, you know, to see how they're feeling energy-wise and emotions. And the idea to boost their well-being is to, in few ways. I mean, we've looked at the neuroscience of well-being is based on 4 pillars for optimal well-being. It's self-awareness, outlook, resilience, and generosity. So self-awareness is that foundation of everything. So we allow people to check in with themselves, not just at the beginning of the day, but also give them the opportunity to reflect at the end of their day on their activities, to understand how they felt about their day. And that is a fundamental part in order not just to boost their productivity, but their inner self-worth and well-being. Outlook is a fundamental part, you know, how we look at our life, the narrative we tell ourselves. So our goal with Essentia is to help people look at their daily tasks, whether it's a call, a meeting, a report, whatever it is they're doing, as an opportunity to grow and expand their full potential. So really trying to change the narrative around their day. And resilience, obviously, especially now like never before, is fundamental. And so what we do is we help them identify their values, their personal vision, and then link it to a bigger purpose, so that when they are going through challenging times at work, they can always be reminded of what their bigger version or bigger purpose is. And so the idea is to really provide them in the flow of their work little, you know, nudges, motivational boosts, well-being hacks. You know, breaks are such a simple thing that we often overlook, and that's one of the main causes for burnouts and stress. And also work-life balance. So part of our experience, we have a part of the product is called Wishlist, which is we help people identify all the meaningful activities they would love to do for their personal fulfillment and well-being, whether it's meditation, reading, helping a friend. And the goal is, through our, well-being assistant, to help them find pockets in their day where they can complete these activities, so they can experience greater work-life balance and ultimately, you know, link it back to their productivity and well-being. So it's really trying to give a holistic support in the flow of their daily life.
Okay, great, wonderful. And you know, let's talk about Katie. You've worked for a startup, and what do you feel are the challenges that people, you know, face in terms of working for a startup? What do you think, you know, in terms of they have problems with communicating or setting boundaries? What was your experience from working for a startup?
I think that it's not just in the startup. I think it's exasperated in that environment because everything's new. You know, so I think Sanj mentioned that he was doing lots of things for the first time, and pretty much everyone in these organizations is, even if they're relatively senior, as the company grows, they're growing and having to step into places that they haven't done before. So you've got that constantly working outside of your comfort zone, constantly being pushed. And, you know, that trickles down. So even the best intentions, people haven't experienced it. People haven't managed other people. You know, they maybe have never even considered mental well-being. And the culture in a startup is like, kind of be scrappy, go quick, get it done. And that, you know, the type of people that you hire for those environments are generally people who, in my opinion, their personality types are a little bit more susceptible to burning out, because they are like high achievers and they are perfectionists. And it's those personality traits that help startups grow, but also crush people in the process. So, like, I think it's amazing, like having tools at Tres Essentia. Am I saying it correct?
Essentia, sorry.
Essentia.
Okay, the 3 is just backwards. Okay, so I think these tools are amazing for self-awareness, but in the context of a business or an organization, you can have all the self-awareness that you know in the world, but if you haven't got a support system within that organization, it doesn't help. If your manager doesn't have the skills or the courage or whatever it might be to come and say to you, hey, are you okay? then your self-awareness is just going to make you feel worse almost, because you're like, I'm really struggling, but I've got no one helping me. You know, so that structure needs to be there, and that kind of managerial and also colleague relationships. But then on a strategic level, you know, it's all very well having wonderful perks and access to, you know, different things within the office. But if you haven't got procedures, I don't like to use the word procedures too much, but if you haven't got processes in place, so if someone is struggling, the manager not only knows how to speak to them, but, you know, what do you do? How do you change their work day? What is it that you can do for someone to help them operate in that environment? Whether that means they need to change their hours, or they need support, or they need to change their responsibilities slightly. So there's something needs to be there. It needs to, like all business processes, there needs to be one to start, but it needs to be consistent, so people know they've got something to fall back on. There's like I wouldn't say there's one problem. It's so complex, all the different bits, and for each person it's different as well, you know. But I think, you know, businesses really needs to think about what they're doing at a strategic level and how they're going to make that go up, down, and across the organization before they get into doing the self-awareness thing. Because if all your staff know they're struggling but they've got no one to help them, it's like asking, you know, in a staff survey, asking for what do you think we should do and then completely ignoring them. You're kind of making the problem a little bit worse, I think, in my opinion. But yeah, it's not just startups.
No, I was talking about from your experience working for a startup, and I'm sure Sankar can sort of say that, you know, having worked for a startup, you know, what do you feel is, you know, people sort of, they focus on sort of like the results rather than the people. What was your experience in terms of, you know, working for a startup? I just wanted to talk about startups in particular.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, actually, because in my experience, the startups I've worked at have been very people-focused companies, or at least they have the intention to be people-focused companies. And I think this often materializes as, you know, generous perks, good salaries, you know, nice office space, all of this kind of stuff. But I think the startup world especially is still relatively young in terms of understanding how to support a growing team of people in an environment like this. So I think the kind of initial reaction was, well, let's give people lots of things, lots of nice things, and that will make them happy. But actually, I think as the industry matures, we're starting to realize that, you know, it's kind of like, you know, in real life, let's say, you know, things don't make us happy. It's we need relationships, we need support mechanisms, we need outlets, all of these kind of things. So I think this is what startups are starting to wake up to now, and I think a lot of startups are trying. We're definitely kind of seeing a shift there, but it's still relatively young in terms of the maturity of understanding how to do that. But I completely agree with what Katie said. You know, it's not just about startups, but I think that environment is a breeding ground for things like burnout and, you know, high degrees of anxiety because of the level of being outside of your comfort zone. I like to think of I called it something like the comfort zone ratio. You know, how often are you outside your comfort zone versus inside your comfort zone? And if you're always inside of your comfort zone, you're going to be very bored. If you're always outside of your comfort zone, you're going to be very anxious and stressed. So what's the balance? Like how much in and out of your comfort zone should you be? And I think having an understanding of that and knowing where your kind of levels of comfort are important for, one, staying motivated by learning new things and being in an interesting, changing environment, but two, making sure you can maintain a balance of not constantly having to think about everything for the first time every time you approach something. So I think finding that balance is a difficult but interesting pursuit when you're in an environment like that.
Okay, great. So it is about finding the balance, and it's also finding about, you know, the sort of the way to sort of have a work-life balance as well, and not saying sort of, you know, I'm going to work 12 hours a day and I'm not going to think about my wellness, because at the end of the day, that's going to affect your work. So, and Kasia, you obviously see a lot of people from the outside, you know, in terms of working with, you know, a lot of clients. What are the challenges you see from your clients? Tell us about your experience with mental health.
Yeah. I love it because I'm just really lucky with the job I have, because I get to talk a lot to amazing people. So part of me feels like I have worked in a startup just because I have so many clients that have been working or are working in a startup. And I think a lot of it is to do with creating boundaries as well. So some of the leaders or managers or people I know who have amazing careers is because they created very clear boundaries from the start of what my work-life balance is, how far I'm willing to go. And they have achieved greater results over time because of those really clear boundaries. For those who haven't created those boundaries, I see the biggest challenge being their own expectations of themselves, which often are a projection. They're not actually coming from the outside. So is this high achiever, I'm not enough voice that you have inside of yourself that's pushing you out of your comfort zone way too often. I love, by the way, the comfort zone ratio term. I took a note of that.
Yeah.
So that's this inner voice that's also often pushing us to prove, to like have to constantly be achieving more, even though you actually, digging a hole underneath yourself. And the other problem I notice, or challenge I notice, is workload. It's just too much. So no matter how good you are, there is just no way to get through it. And I think that's more of what Katie was talking about on the organization side, from the inside, how to distribute this workload and how to have a structure where people are maybe sometimes stretched, but not stretched too far. So it's a mix of what organization can do and our own personal boundaries and our own confidence to create them so that the workplace or the ambition doesn't swallow us.
Mm-hmm. So, and also creating a sort of being more productive in a way that, we set ourselves up, we don't put too much on our plate. So we manage our time and our productivity better. And in terms of, Kasia, in terms of what would you recommend for somebody, to start their day in a good mindset to deal with their, busy days?
Again, this is very personal because we talk a lot about morning routine, and I know everyone on this call is aware of the benefits of morning routine. But for example, when my son was between age 1 to age 2, there was no morning routine because my day started at like 5 a.m. and by 7:30 I was exhausted and in a vortex. So again, we need to find routines and habits that work for us. These are the only things that are sustainable. There is no point taking like a solution and trying to fit yourself into it. If you don't have a 2-year-old waking up every day, then establishing some sort of morning routine is amazing because it gives you this intention and clarity at the start of the day, and it really can kind of unfold your day in a better or more productive way. Or if you can't do it every day, do it Monday. Like for me, Monday is my day when it's the only day when I wake up at 6 a.m. and I go for like an hour-long walk by the sea. And this is just like how I start my week. And I notice since I do that and get this headspace, sometimes it's not even having a plan or a clarity or a meditation. It's literally just having that space when you're not doing anything, where for once you don't have a plan, you're not trying to be productive. You just don't do anything, you just walk for an hour, and that's enough sometimes to create more space for what's important.
Okay, great. Okay, so building good habits, basically.
But habits that work for you, rather than trying to kind of use Headspace or use this or use that and follow a structure that might not necessarily, be organic for you.
Okay. And Javier, why is it so important to give easy access to high quality support?
Because if you don't, that's when you get into the hole, right? If you're in the need of mental support and then it takes 3 months to find the right person, in those 3 months, you're going to be way deeper into the hole. So you need to be able to find it fast, easy, and of high quality, in my opinion. And it's not rocket science to do this. Like, we're not sending rockets to the moon. It's just getting the right group of people behind the right product.
Mm-hmm. Okay. what do you think, the challenges are in terms of, like what do you think people suffer most in the workplace in terms of mental health?
I think by far stigma.
Stigma, okay.
Yeah. I mean, right now, unfortunately, we still live in this world where, where most people think if I expose my mental health, it's going to have a direct correlation with my career path in this company, whatever company I'm working, right? Because when they make that decision, and they're going to have maybe two individuals, that want that position, one might have a better mental health than the other, which it shouldn't be seen like that, but that's how it's done. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the biggest hurdle for people is for sure stigma.
Mm-hmm. So making it, making people talk about it more. I mean, yeah. Katie, I'm sure you can contribute to that stigma topic.
Yeah, I think I would maybe not use the word making them talk about it, because I think it really has to be a choice. But definitely within organizations, there's so much evidence that if leaders lead the way, as with anything else, and share their experiences if they have them, it doesn't necessarily need to be a mental health crisis, but times they struggle, how they process stress, and let people understand that they can also talk about it. That little tiny bit about just being human and being vulnerable can plant the seed and create an environment where mental health is, starts to become part of the DNA of the organization. And we talk about well-being and wellness, and we can use whatever language you want to dress it up, but it's really about our health, like as a complete human being. And I think the stigma around mental health compared to physical health is vast. If you break your leg, someone sends you some flowers from work. If you have a mental crisis, they don't talk to you because they're afraid. And it's normal. Like, it's not a criticism of leaders or managers or anything like that. It's just, it's really difficult. It's, if you haven't experienced it as well, it's really hard to have that conversation, because you don't want to make things worse. You feel like you haven't been trained, and also there is that stigma. Maybe if you don't know for sure the person is suffering with something, you don't want to label them like that either. So it's so complex. But the thing of just being human and having a conversation and knowing you don't need to therapize or diagnose someone, and just let them know that it's okay.
What are the signs that we should be looking for in terms of, when people are knowing the causes, in terms of what should we be looking for?
I think, like, I can speak from my own experience, like the signs and symptoms, they're just like endless almost. So I think rather than going through all of them, you can look at starting to get physically sick, your engagement with your work, just feeling pretty exhausted generally. Like, these are all signs, but the main thing to look out for is a significant change in behavior. So, for example, what my signs and symptoms might be compared to somebody else could be completely different. And for example, when I'm quite stressed or struggling, I tend to put my foot on the gas. I will work a little bit harder. I will just kind of bury myself in stuff, whereas someone else might withdraw. So if you see a colleague or a manager or someone you're managing, behaving very differently, that's a good sign. You don't need to know the specifics, like that's what I'm saying. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to be human enough, know your colleagues, and kind of go, oh, that's not normal for them. If they have an emotional outburst in a meeting and it's not normal for them, think about what could be causing that. So I think, it's more about the changes as opposed to the specifics that I would suggest, because you don't want to have to go into that kind of like therapizing, diagnosing space within the work environment, unless you're qualified, of course.
Okay, great. And Monica, can you talk about, we talked about work-life balance. I think Sankar mentioned it earlier. A lot of people sort of bring their problems into the office. How do we build a sort of a more holistic sort of view on our work-life balance in terms of sort of being holistically healthier?
Well, I think one of the things that can help probably is to expand the the part of our life or the space that we give to feel good, just to feel good. I think we're sometimes we have a lot of mental patterns and things that come from culture or how we are supposed to perform in our profession, and it is something like you gradually are kind of taking off, kind of something that nurtures the part that makes you feel good. So I think one thing it would be to just connect both parts. So I think it's important to connect that in your daily life, every day, even in your profession, you have a certain amount of feel good, and to expand or to leave a space where the tension or any emotion that is growing can just go and have a space. I think that's one thing. And also it's about changing the mindset of being more generous towards yourself and generous towards people. So I think if you grow generosity towards yourself and you just dare to have some things that maybe seem revolutionary, because the way we live in most societies, it is not about doing that. So I don't know, sometimes it's just like just deciding to do something different during your lunchtime, or maybe having an idea about organizing something with colleagues, or talking with your boss about something that could be done during the day. I think it's a way of being also creative, and so I think generosity and being creative and creating space. So I always that's something I do in my personal life. That's not difficult for me, but that's something that has helped me to maintain my mental health, and I think it's good for everyone, because we are all creative. We are creative beings. We are not born to just follow rules, to just follow everything. We want to just think sometimes differently. We want to embrace diversity, and I think if we just try to go to a place of more empathy and to feel more from the heart, and just to see your colleagues and the people around you in a way where you can just be more generous. Like, okay, everyone has like different ways to go through stress, to when they have something that is really challenging for them, or maybe they have personal problems, family, health issues, COVID extra pressure, and so I think it's something also about self-responsibility. So I think one of the things I think it's really good is to just do something every day to grow that self-worth and self generosity. I think that really can change the way we are creating more well-being and being responsible to bring something of that into your community and workplace and family, and that way everything can become more connected, and we feel more connected. We don't feel so isolated. We don't feel so, wow, that's really strange, because I think every single person on earth has sometimes had any emotional or mental issue. I see that a lot with teenagers, and I tell them, you see, this is good. You're doing a training. You're doing a new learning of things that it's going to help you through your life. So, I just tell them you're lucky, instead of thinking, that's really a mess. And that way, you can connect to people, and maybe, these, you can kind of find ways of helping each other.
Yes. And so humanizing the topic and being able to talk about it. And also teaching children. I mean, how do you also teach children to sort of manage their mental health? Because that's important.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think there's a lot of things that you need to do. You need to do a part with the adults surrounding. So you need to establish a good communication with parents or tutors, just to help them focus on the positive part of the child, and to also try to remember what are the good things, what do you like about that human being, and because they mostly children, teenagers, and families, they tend to focus on the negative and about what they're not being able to do, and feeling really scared about how it's going to affect in their school, in performance and social life. So I think the first thing is just bring the view into what are the tools you have now? How can you manage the situation now? Let's start from, just one of them, and see yourself from a different perspective, like bird view, like, okay, this is happening. This is something that is going to teach you a lot about your own mind, your body, and your emotions, and you're going to become a better prepared human being for life. And I think that's something that helps. And also finding the way to connect with them. I think with young people, it's very important to just be very open, and just be very patient and wait. So I think that's something that can help us, to learn to just sometimes take the time to let the space, so we can create good behaviors, we can create good habits. So just help them to just start looking at themselves from a different way, and making it like something that is not as difficult as it seems. And from that start, then they can find their own strategies.
Okay, great. Well, it's also being kind and encourage children to sort of speak in a more, like you said, in a more positive way. I want to go to Stephen. Stephen, you've been working on sort of a bigger scale in terms of governments and schools and leaders. What are the sort of the problems that you face in terms of mental health with the work that you've been doing? Stephen, is he there? Or have we lost him?
Well, I'll try not to face myself a mental health problem. Hello, can you hear me there? Yeah. In terms of I mean, I was the whole journey, because you started with how to measure mental health. That's one of the biggest questions in mental health world, and with professional and global organizations. So how do we face it? We start basically we face on 5 steps or 5 areas that we measure. We use a self-evaluation. That's very important, because, as many of you said, is how do you feel? So we measure in different sectors. Like, let's touch right now with COVID, we are giving support to hospitals. So although they are professionals and they have expertise in that area, but we can find that there are, in terms of an organization, there are a lot of things that they don't have. They don't have the resources, they don't have the time, they don't have the tools, and so when we enter, we give them an area of, we call it scientific motivation, because it touches the neuroscience, it touches communication, it touches relations, how we connect directly and in minutes. We can be working with people for years, but we don't know each other. So, and the same happens when we move on to the army sector. Because the generals might find that they cannot communicate properly with the soldiers, and so there is a big connection and a problem. So what we developed this the technology, we call it technology without cables, which is the inquiry. And in inquiry, we put it like that because we put it, this is the inquiry, it's 47 steps, and there are nice ways of like, how do you feel, to share and to connect. And what it does is it takes people to that kind of connection. It creates a space where they can have maybe 5 minutes, or you can have 3, 4, 5, 6 hours doing you're using the tool, and it develops that kind of resilience in a practical way. It develops the connectivity of a doctor actually passing through a wall and removing the fear of talking to the nurses or to patients, because there is the ego there that we found in the exercises that we're doing right now with them, and yeah, kind of, he could not express that he had problems. So that is what it creates, that kind of sense.
Okay, so ultimately Pentagon Wave is helping people communicate on the same level and using, you know, sort of different words to sort of describe their situation and how they're feeling and how they're expressing.
Well, we start, right now we're doing it virtually because these are hospitals that are dealing with COVID patients, and the numbers here are rocketing, so they are at a high level of stress. They don't know, as you mentioned, Sankar and Philippus, where do we find help? And obviously we need to give and deliver help fast. So how we do it is we connect virtually. They have teams of 20 people, and then we start a process. Different things. We call it yoga inquiry, which is giving them really fast tools like anchor. You know, like how do you anchor yourself so that you are right here, right now? Not reading books, but actually not bring that practical option. The breathing, they are experts. They know, but they don't breathe properly. So we exercise, we have one exercise that we call it the submarine. So in the submarine, we join together and we start making decisions, coping with like team building and all that stuff. So it's different parts. And then we enter into Pentalab, which is a 5-step workshop that usually would take 2 hours. 25 minutes or 30 minutes maximum. And what it creates is like a roller coaster of emotions. So that's the way we ask them not like to release the pressure, share big problems sometimes. They connect emotionally, which is beautiful, because it's like probably you are the director of the hospital, but we see you as, no, it's difficult to connect with Katrina. But through that workshop, they discovered, for example, that Katrina, although has a lot of pressure, for instance, one day the director shared, he was reading for the second time a book. And another director of the hospital said, wow, no, like, I discovered that he has time, but how can he create time to read a book? And I am feeling guilty, right? So those things, what it creates is automatic transformation. And I love the word that you used, Nola, as well, Filippo, about growth. That's what basically everyone wants. How can we grow? How can we grow in organization? How can I grow in the way that I deliver solutions? So that's how we're doing it with the people here.
Great. And actually going to Filippo, you know, we're giving people the tools like well-being perks in the offices. How do we sort of integrate it more in terms of, you know, sort of making it feel like it's part of their day? Filippo?
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm thinking. Well, I think, you know, I thought about that. And I think perks are great, but I really think fundamentally we need to up the conversation to actually teach people the benefits that these perks can bring to their well-being, happiness, and even if you want to define it as productivity. Because, you know, for me, one of the main reasons that got me started is that it's shocking is that our educational system doesn't teach us a fundamental part of who we are as individuals, which is our inner world, which inevitably impacts the way we live our life, whether it's professionally or personally. So I think for me, the first step would be to educate people. Like, what does it actually, how does our mind work? How do we manage our emotions? What are the necessary conditions for our optimum well-being, and human thriving? And I think from that perspective, whether we want to bring more philosophical or more of a scientific evidence, I mean, luckily nowadays, neuroscience can back a lot of things. I think that is also the way in which we can probably convert more people initially to believe more in the benefits. And then in terms of how to integrate it, again, there's different ways. So one of the ways that we look at it is, there is, again, the science of habit making. So you can look at 3 elements in the formation of a habit. So if you look at, there is the trigger, which is the first thing that kind of motivates you to consider a potential behavior. Then there is the actual behavior, the routine, and then the reward. So how you feel after doing that. And so the idea is to understand for each individual, what are those 3 elements and how can you integrate them in their day so that they can kind of experience, this greater work-life balance, which ultimately I think it's a very important aspect, and there's no one size fit all. It's a very personalized element, as many people shared.
I think everybody, some people struggle with implementing sort of healthy habits, and it's sort of like finding a way it's a bit like learning a language, isn't it? It's kind of like it has to be, you have to create a discipline with yourself to think, I need to do this to make myself feel better.
Yeah, well, I think one of the common mistakes there is that we set overarching goals, and I think we've talked about before the comfort zone. I mean, science shows that we do our optimum work when we are at the right level of stress and anxiety. If we don't have enough positive stress, we might not be motivated to act. If we have too much stress, our brain shrinks, and so we're not incentivized to take action. So I think it's finding that right balance and awareness in order for people to take habits and start small. Like the law of the small doing, and it's repetition is more important than saying I'm going to go on a crazy diet just for 10 days. That's not going to bring you the results. But how can you build through repetition so that your brain also gets accustomed to it and eventually turns into a habit? Because actually our brain looks to act from habits because it saves energy. So it's about how do we train people gradually to move into positive behaviors.
Okay, and you're obviously going to create something on your platform which will measures people's comfort zones and out of their comfort zone and what they want to do more of.
Yeah, I think it's important because I mean, this is such a big question, on a philosophical level, but I think ultimately if we want to progress, not just as companies, but as society, we need to evolve as human beings. And so I think technology is a great enabler nowadays. I think it allows for greater personalization, but I think our goal is to develop, algorithms and support systems that only win when people win. And there needs to be this kind of, collaboration between technology and people to actually benefit their well-being, because quite frankly, technology and we're technology providers can hinder people's well-being. There's mounting evidence, how these technologies, some of them are built, they actually hinder and create more stress in us. So it's important. There's actually this wonderful initiative called Digital Wellbeing, which is this movement talking about how do we actually have a healthier relationship with technology, because technology, even though it's been around for a while, we're still kids when it comes to our relationship with digital means. So it's important to also have that kind of well-being since it's part of our daily life.
Okay, so technology, can be positive, but it can also it helps and can hinder us. So it's important to sort of have digital sort of detox moments during the day where you're actually thinking about yourself and your well-being, basically.
Yeah.
And especially now, it's so important to build awareness around these topics and around mental health, during times, COVID times. And Javier and Sankar, do you feel that a lot of people are now focusing more on wellness in the workplace?
Sanj, I'll let you take it, Sanj.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, in my experience, at least, yes. You know, I've definitely seen an increase in the amounts that people willing to talk about this. You know, maybe it's just a bubble that I'm in, but definitely within my experience and talking to other people, there's an increase of it. So are we there yet? Are we at the point where you know we have all of the support mechanisms in place and people feel equally comfortable talking about their mental health issues as they do about their broken leg, as Katie said? I don't think we're there yet, but definitely, at least in my experience, people are talking about this more. I don't think it's just about, you know, talking about it more in startups in that particular bubble, but I think in general, as you know, the generations move on, we're becoming more open to talking about these things. And I think it's interesting when we think about it in the context of taboos, you know, and if you think about what taboos are, they're generally born from things that we do in private. And because we do them in private, we talk about them less. And because we talk about them less, it makes us feel more uncomfortable to talk about them. So the more that we talk about these things and take them out of the dark shadows and bring them, you know, bring them into the light, as it were, not to get too poetic about it, you know, I think this is what stops something being a taboo. And, you know, if you think about this for many of taboos, if you think of menstruation, breastfeeding, sex, whatever it might be, I think there's been a huge shift from consumer brands, charities, organizations, and just general society to talk about these things more and to bring them more into our daily, natural, and modern lives. And I think that's definitely happening with mental health. But we have a long way to go. We still have a long way to go. And I think, you know, one of the big topics today has been about how do we notice the signs, how do we measure it, and I think that is still something that needs to evolve somewhat. We know when somebody's got a broken leg, you poke it and they fall over, or they've got a cast or something. But how do we know when somebody's suffering from something?
And also, how can we prevent it? You know, that's
yeah. I think, you know, prevention is an interesting topic, and I think it's a difficult balance, right? Because I think, you know, I think part of it is accepting that there will always be some kind of struggle in our life in terms of you know, our mental health, and one side is having the tools to deal with those things that come along rather than trying to stop them happening completely. We talk a lot about burnout, for example, and anxiety, work-related anxiety in this panel, but we shouldn't forget that mental well-being isn't just about things that are induced by work and exaggerated within the work environment, but there are plenty of other things that we can suffer in terms of our mental health. You know, grief and loss. We can't really stop people dying around us. We're probably going to continue to experience some level of grief, and we're going to experience that in different ways and different levels. So it's not something we can prevent, but what we can do is equip ourselves with the right tools to deal with those things when they come along, or if they come along. So I think that kind of building a toolbox and a strong foundation of mental well-being is probably the focus that I would like to see you know, more of us work on.
Great, thank you, Sankar. And you know, there's so many on this call. There's so much to talk about, but we've only got an hour. So I mean, you know, just from each one of you, Sankar's mentioned what he would like to see, you know, changes in the workplace and how we can sort of prevent, you know, sort of how we can help mental health at work. Just from each one of you, what changes do you feel we can sort of contribute in the workplace in the future? Starting with Monica.
Okay, so I'm the first. Things that we would like to see differently, yes, or changing.
Yes.
Okay.
Positive changes.
Okay, I think one of the things that would be good change, it would be, as Sankar mentioned, is being able to feel free to talk about what's going on, and to have the feeling that there's some kind of support. I think this is really helpful. So if you have problem and you're having really a bad time inside, if you feel that somebody is going to support you, or that there's some place where you can at least talk, maybe not really deep, but you can have that space, that's going to be really helpful. So I think it would be good that people would feel like going to work, it's also going to a safe place. And nice. And that everybody is doing, especially people that have responsibility, high responsibility, they are trained, or they know something about their own well-being. They know a little bit more their colleagues or the people that work for them, in order to just really also be working with prevention, work on looking at the signs, and not just passing them go. And so that way, there's things that can really be prevented, because the same as it happens with any illness, physical illness, things are going to go into you're going to get worse and worse and worse. So there are many things that can be done when there's first signs of anxiety, or people are not sleeping well, or they maybe cannot control themselves in some emotional situation. And I think that could be a good point, to just feel safe and feel like there's some kind of system or support.
Great. Thank you, Monica. Filippo, can you contribute to the positive changes you'd like to see?
Yes, absolutely. I think, in my opinion, we need to change the metrics in which we evaluate the success of a company, because incentives matter. And I think if we just look at profitability, performance, then we might just put on machines. They're probably better than us at being effective. They don't need to sleep or eat. So I think as companies, we need to, generally as an economic system, we need to start looking at new metrics beyond GDP. And so in this case, even companies, like, how can they measure their well-being and human empowerment? I think for me, that's what I deeply, deeply hope to see in the future for companies generally.
Nice, nice. And Kasia?
I have this storm of thoughts going on in my head, could be this, could be this, could be this, could be this, what shall I say? So hard to pick one. I've got two. I totally agree with Filippo, and just it's on a general why we do what we do, and where is the world going, and do we want to have a planet for our children? So that's one thing that's just on a big scale. On a small scale, I think if the leadership of companies could let go of that belief that they can't be wrong, that they need to be right, and that they need to be strong, and that they always have to have the answer, if they can let go of that and just accept that we all make mistakes and that's okay, I feel like that would sprinkle down to the rest of the organizations and maybe create that space for everyone to feel like that.
Great, great.
These are my two.
Let go of the ego. Yes. And Katie? Katie?
Sorry, I was on mute. I think for me, it's seeing, the word strategic sounds really but seeing a more strategic approach to mental health within organizations. So it touches on a little bit of what others have said and what I mentioned earlier. I see it as in three parts, really. So there's that, if you had an inverted triangle, the very top bit is about, everyone in the organization needs to have an awareness of what good mental health feels like for them, and a toolkit to be able to spot the signs and take actions. And then the next level is then, making sure managers have the support to go in and have those difficult conversations so they can signpost help. Then the very bottom of the triangle is, the decision makers. Are you, touching on the whole, KPI shouldn't just be about money. Are you building a business that supports your people? Are you giving them, if they're struggling, access to healthcare outside of the organization that is easy and to get to and good quality? Do you have policies in place so you can make the right adaptations that not only meet your legal obligations, but your moral ones as well, just to be like a good corporate citizen. So I think I see it as like that upside down triangle, and at the bare minimum, like I think all companies need to be equipping their staff to look after themselves in work.
Good, caring about the people and providing a you know, like a first aid kit for wellness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Katie. And just Javier and Stephen, just to hear your point of view, and then we will close off. And thank you for joining us all today. Javier?
Fantastic. I'll keep it short. I think by far the biggest help they could do is giving free access to therapy to all employees. I mean, to me, it's mind-blowing that till today we see free gym membership as the #1 benefit, which just blows my mind, right? At the end of the day, what at least the professionals in the tech world that we work with, their mind is obviously their most important asset, but they're sending to the gym, right? And these people are having to go at home at night, you know, and doing all this stuff on their own to get some help. And that should be as easy as going into the extranet of the company and anonymously making a meeting with a therapist, right? It should be that easy, and it should be completely free of charge. Yes. And I can guarantee you the ROI of this is massive.
Yeah, so you're onto something. Definitely. No, I think it's very important to, you know, have access, like you said. It's not just about your physical, but your mental, which is, you know, keeping it in balance, mind, body, and spirit. Yes. And so, Stephen, just your point of view from over in Colombia, and then we'll close off.
Yeah. Well, no, fantastic contributions, but from my experience, I will say, yes, definitely we need a change in the system of education. Basically, the education is a lot of based on pressure, not on enjoyment and discovering the passion of each child and graduate to this, even at PhD levels. Technology, definitely, we need to use technology in a better format. And I mean, right now, thanks to COVID, we are connected really fast from different countries. So that's a way of connecting really fast. But also, I like what Monica said. We need to go into create. I'm terrible at carpentry, giving it a shot in creation, in becoming a creative beings. And finally, I would say, yeah, motivation. I'm a motivator. So what we did is you need to have people that motivate team. Being able to deliver those tools so that the people they don't need us. You know, basically we need to create, I think, yeah, you said, Javier, no, like free mental health, which is donated to the Geneva Peace Week, one of our workshops that is gonna be available for anyone to use it wherever they want. So that's what we have to do is like make it available because it's easy. Once you start to create a thing that mental health and putting all that big pressure, and like in our theory, we call it, we start from point zero. And point zero means we know all that is outside the box, like all the previous problems. For instance, child in the mountains of Colombia, a black girl, 9-year-old. She had been displaced, no family, arrived at this town in the mountains, coca plantations, guerrillas, paramilitaries, and she was living with the auntie. For 2 years in this school, this little girl hasn't spoken a word at all. Now, point zero for us, it means I'm not interested in knowing the history, the story of that girl before we give our tools and the motivation. Now, what happens after is the growth of the person is incredible. We didn't know that. I think I remember in Barcelona, you mentioned that, you know, it's like, that's what happens. We all are at the same playing field. That's point zero. And what we regenerate is the transformation in a very fast format. So that's what happened to that little girl, that she came up at the front of the class and she started to talk about that she wanted to one day go to Paris. She loves skating, and all the kids were amazed. We were okay, we just clapped, well done. afterwards, like 3 days later, we went to do the test and the interview to the teacher, and she said, like, I'm absolutely horrified. I said, wow, why? Because of this. And she explained that girl never spoke in 2 years. So I don't know what you do. Well, we just treat everyone at the same playing field. So that's, I think, important in the mental health. If we really want, apart from business, money, obviously is billions of people right now. Like before, it was 500 million on the data of the WHO as in mental health. With COVID, it probably goes 3 or 4 or 5 times even more. So, yeah, I think it's the purpose. It should be on how we deliver basically those solutions, so that basically no one should reach. So it's not just like bombard with all the big problems, but give it an option. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Stephen. Thank you very much for joining us in Colombia, and thank you everybody. And I hope that you guys are going to connect and sort of make, give access to help with mental health, and you lot can share your tools and deliver them in a positive way. So I'm very happy that we had this talk, and we will obviously share it on social media afterwards, so that we can promote this topic and make people openly talk about it. So thank you everybody, and we'll do it again, and see you all very soon.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.